The blood-red sun dipped below the horizon as Olivia Owens clutched her father's final letter in her trembling hands, the dusty stagecoach rumbling beneath her toward a fate she never imagined. Nevada Territory, 1868, would either be her salvation or her undoing. Exhaustion pulled at Olivia's bones as she gazed out the dirty window, watching the endless sage and sand of the Nevada desert pass by. 3 days of travel from San Francisco had left her weary, hungry, and questioning her decision to answer her father's deathbed plea. A plea that had arrived too late, discovered among his effects after his passing, directing her to find his ranch outside Reno. "Miss, we're approaching Reno now," the stagecoach driver called from above. "Prepare your belongings." Olivia smoothed her gray traveling dress, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. At 22, she had already endured more than most women twice her age. The death of her mother when she was 12, followed by her father's abandonment as he chased silver dreams in Nevada. She had survived by taking in sewing and teaching music to wealthy children in San Francisco. But now her father was dead, reportedly leaving her a ranch she knew nothing about. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the Reno station, a humble wooden structure surrounded by a collection of saloons, general stores, and other establishments that comprised the growing town. Olivia stepped down, accepting the driver's assistance while clutching her single carpet bag. "Miss Owens," a gray-haired man in a worn suit approached her. "I'm Benjamin Walsh, your father's attorney. I've been expecting you, Mr. Walsh." Olivia extended her hand. "Thank you for meeting me. I have arranged a room for you at the boarding house." He gestured toward a 2-story building across the street. "We can discuss your father's estate in the morning." "I would prefer to see the ranch immediately," Olivia said firmly. "I've traveled too far to delay." Walsh's expression tightened. "The Cottonwood Ranch is 15 miles outside town, Miss Owens. It's nearly dusk and the road can be dangerous after dark." "Then we should leave at once," she insisted. The attorney sighed. "Very well. I'll secure a wagon, but I must warn you the situation at Cottonwood is complicated." "Complicated how?" Olivia asked, but Walsh was already moving toward the livery stable. An hour later, Olivia found herself bouncing along a rutted dirt road, the setting sun casting long shadows across the sagebrush-dotted landscape. Walsh had fallen into an uncomfortable silence after explaining that her father had died of pneumonia 3 months earlier. "Mr. Walsh," Olivia finally said, "you mentioned complications. I'd appreciate knowing what awaits me." The attorney cleared his throat. "Your father's final months were challenging. He made some unusual decisions. Such as, he married again quite suddenly about a year ago, a widow named Alina. She passed away in childbirth 8 months later, leaving him with infant twins." Olivia stared at Walsh in disbelief. "Twins? My father had more children." "Yes, Miss Owens, a boy and a girl. They're now 4 months old. And who has been caring for them since my father's death? That's the other complication," Walsh said, his voice dropping. "Your father hired a ranch hand last year, Zachary Irwin, former Union cavalry officer. He's been running the ranch and caring for the children, a cowboy caring for infant twins." Olivia couldn't hide her astonishment. "That's preposterous. Mr. Irwin is unconventional, but he was loyal to your father. He promised to keep everything running until you arrived." As darkness fell completely, a small cluster of lights appeared in the distance. The wagon crested a gentle hill, and Olivia could make out the silhouette of a substantial ranch house nestled among cottonwood trees, with several outbuildings nearby. "Cottonwood Ranch," Walsh announced unnecessarily. The wagon pulled into a yard lit by a single lantern hanging from the porch. A dog barked somewhere in the darkness, and Olivia could hear the soft lowing of cattle in a nearby corral. "It appears everyone's retired for the night," Walsh said, helping Olivia down from the wagon. "Perhaps we should." The front door creaked open, spilling lamplight onto the porch. A young woman with blonde hair tied in a severe bun stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Walsh," she greeted, then turned her eyes to Olivia. "You must be Miss Owens. I'm Martha Simmons. I help with the cooking and the babies." "Where is Mr. Irwin?" Walsh asked. Martha's expression softened. "Finally asleep. The twins have been colicky for 3 nights running. He's barely closed his eyes." "I should speak with him," Olivia said, stepping toward the door. "Follow me," Martha replied, "but please tread softly." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly welcoming, with simple but well-crafted furniture. A fire burned low in a stone hearth, and Olivia caught the lingering scent of beef stew. Martha led her through the main room toward a doorway at the back of the house. "He's in there," Martha whispered, gesturing to the partially open door. "I'll prepare your room upstairs." Olivia nodded, then carefully pushed the door wider. The scene that greeted her made her breath catch in her throat. In a sturdy wooden rocking chair sat a man unlike any she had ever encountered. His tall frame was slumped with exhaustion, but even in slumber, he maintained a rigidly upright posture. Each of his powerful arms cradled a sleeping infant. His head had dropped forward, chin resting on his chest, a shock of dark hair falling across his forehead. Zachary Irwin wore no coat, just a worn blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His breathing was so shallow that for a moment, Olivia feared he wasn't breathing at all. As if sensing her presence, one of the twins squirmed slightly. The man's arms instinctively tightened, securing the baby, though his eyes remained closed. He looked so utterly depleted that Olivia felt a pang of sympathy despite her reservations. She found the cowboy sleeping upright with a twin in each arm, too tired to breathe. Olivia stood transfixed by the tableau before her, unsure whether to announce her presence or retreat. The decision was made for her when the floorboard beneath her foot creaked loudly. Zachary Irwin's eyes snapped open alert, wary, and startlingly blue. For a moment he appeared disoriented, then his gaze focused on Olivia. "Miss Owens," he said, his voice a low rumble, not a question but a recognition. "Mr. Irwin," she replied, keeping her voice hushed. "I apologize for disturbing you, been expecting you." He shifted slightly, careful not to wake the infants, though not in the middle of the night. "The stagecoach arrived late," Olivia explained, then gestured to the sleeping babies. "These are my siblings," Zachary nodded. "Samuel and Sarah, 4 months old last Tuesday." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the soft breathing of the twins. "I can take them," Olivia finally offered, stepping forward. Something flickered in Zachary's eyes, relief, reluctance, or perhaps both. "They just settled. Better not risk it." Martha appeared at Olivia's shoulder. "Your room's ready, Miss Owens. Mr. Walsh has brought in your bag." "Thank you," Olivia said, then turned back to Zachary. "We have much to discuss, Mr. Irwin, but it can wait until morning." He nodded once. "Breakfast at sunrise." "Ranch work doesn't wait." Olivia followed Martha up a narrow staircase to a small but clean bedroom with a hand-sewn quilt on the bed and a porcelain washbasin on a wooden stand. "The twins' room is next door," Martha explained. "Mr. Irwin usually sleeps in the bunkhouse with the other hands, but lately he's been staying in the house to help with the night feedings." "How many ranch hands are there?" Olivia asked, removing her hat and gloves. "Just 3 now, Eduardo and the Peterson brothers. Good men, all of them." "The ranch isn't large, but your father was building it up." Martha hesitated. "Miss Owens, I hope you don't mind my saying, but we're all mighty relieved you've come. Mr. Irwin's been working himself to death trying to keep everything going." Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed. "I had no idea about any of this, Martha. My father and we were estranged. His letter asking me to come arrived after his death." Martha nodded sympathetically. "He spoke of you often, kept a photograph on his desk." She moved toward the door. "Rest well, Miss Owens." The twins will be awake at first light. Alone in the unfamiliar room, Olivia fought back tears of confusion and exhaustion. She had come expecting to settle her father's estate and perhaps sell whatever property he had left her. Instead, she found herself the half-sister to orphaned infants and mistress of a working ranch. And then there was Zachary Irwin, the enigmatic cowboy who had apparently appointed himself guardian to her siblings. What manner of man was he? And more importantly, what would he expect of her now that she had arrived? Sleep came fitfully to Olivia that night, punctuated by the distant sounds of a baby crying and the soft murmur of a man's voice providing comfort. Dawn broke with golden light streaming through the curtainless window. Olivia dressed quickly in her second-best dress, navy blue with white trim, and twisted her hair into a practical knot. As she opened her door, she heard activity downstairs and the unmistakable sounds of fussing babies. In the main room, she found Zachary seated at a large wooden table, a baby cradled in one arm while he awkwardly spooned a thin gruel into the other infant's mouth. In daylight, she could better assess the man. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind, he appeared to be in his early 30s. His dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and a thin scar traced his jawline. "Good morning," she said, stepping into the room. Zachary looked up, and Olivia was struck again by the intensity of his blue eyes. "Miss Owens." "Please call me Olivia," she said, moving closer, "and these must be Samuel and Sarah." "Sam and Sarah," he corrected, then gestured with his chin toward the baby in his arm. "This is Sam. He's the patient one. Sarah there lets the whole territory know when she's hungry." As if to demonstrate, the little girl opened her mouth and wailed when Zachary paused in his feeding efforts. "May I?" Olivia asked, reaching for the spoon. Zachary relinquished it with obvious relief. "You've fed babies before. I helped raise my neighbor's children in San Francisco," Olivia explained, deftly continuing the feeding. 5 of them, including twin boys. Something like respect flickered across Zachary's face. "That's fortunate." Martha bustled in from the kitchen, carrying a pot of coffee. "Morning, Miss Owens. Sleep well as could be expected," Olivia replied diplomatically. "Mr. Walsh, is he still here?" "Left at first light," Zachary answered. "Said to tell you he'd return this afternoon with the legal papers." "I see." Olivia focused on feeding Sarah, who was eagerly accepting each spoonful. "Mr. Irwin," "Zach," he interrupted. "Everyone calls me Zach." "Zach, then. I appreciate all you've done for my siblings, but I'm here now. I'll need to understand the state of the ranch and my father's affairs." "Fair enough," he said, shifting Sam to his shoulder and patting the baby's back. "Martha can watch the twins after breakfast. I'll show you around, give you the lay of the land." Martha set plates of eggs and bacon before them, along with a basket of biscuits. Eduardo brought fresh milk from the barn. It's cooling in the springhouse. Breakfast was a quiet affair, interrupted only by the baby's occasional sounds. Olivia observed Zach surreptitiously. He ate efficiently, one-handed while continuing to hold Sam. His movements were those of a man accustomed to economy of motion, nothing wasted or unnecessary. When they finished eating, Martha took both babies. "I'll wash them up and put them down for their morning nap." "Thank you," Olivia said, then turned to Zach. "I'm ready whenever you are." Zach reached for his hat, hanging on a peg by the door. "Ranch first, then the books." Outside, the morning was crisp and clear, the air scented with sage and pine from the distant mountains. Cottonwood Ranch spread before them, a modest but well-maintained property nestled in a small valley with a creek running through it. "Your father bought this place 5 years ago," Zach explained as they walked toward the barn. "It was little more than a shack and 100 acres then. He added land whenever he could, built the house and outbuildings. We're up to 500 acres now with water rights to the creek." "And the livestock?" Olivia asked, noting the cattle grazing in the distance. "About 200 head of cattle, mostly Herefords. 12 horses, including your father's Morgan stallion, some chickens, 2 milk cows, and a handful of pigs." "It's more substantial than I expected," Olivia admitted. "Thomas had vision," Zach said, using her father's name with the easy familiarity of a friend. "He wasn't chasing quick silver money like most. He was building something to last." They reached the barn, where 2 men were saddling horses. Zach introduced them as the Peterson brothers, Will and John, both stocky, sun-bronzed men with matching mustaches. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Owens," Will said, touching the brim of his hat. "Your pa was a good man." "The best boss we ever had," John added. "We're mighty sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Olivia said, touched by their sincerity. "I appreciate your loyalty to my father and the ranch." "Eduardo's out checking the north fence line," Zach informed her. "You'll meet him at dinner." As the Peterson brothers rode out, Zach showed Olivia the barn with its orderly tack room and sturdy stalls. Everything was meticulously maintained, speaking to care and attention to detail. "Did you organize all this?" she asked. "Some," he admitted. "Your father was particular about his equipment. I just maintained his system." From the barn, they moved to the small blacksmith shop, the smokehouse, and the springhouse built over a natural cold spring that provided refrigeration. Every structure was practical and well constructed. "The house was finished just before your father married a leaner," Zach explained as they walked back. "He wanted her to have a proper home." "How did they meet?" Olivia asked, realizing how little she knew about her father's life. "Stage breakdown in Carson City. She was traveling from St. Louis, widowed, no family. Thomas offered her a place to stay until the stage was repaired. She never left." Zach's voice softened slightly. "They were happy together, short as it was, and the baby's there healthy." "Strong as little mustangs," Zach said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Doc Jenkins comes from town every few weeks to check on them, says they're thriving despite the circumstances." Back at the house, Zach led Olivia to a small office off the main room. A roll-top desk dominated the space, with bookshelves lining one wall and a locked cabinet on another. "Thomas kept meticulous records," Zach said, unlocking the desk with a key from his pocket. "Breeding records for the livestock expenses, profits, it's all here." For the next 2 hours, Olivia immersed herself in her father's ledgers while Zach explained the ranch operations. She was impressed by the orderly accounts and the gradual growth of the enterprise. "The ranch is profitable?" she asked, studying the most recent entries. "Modestly," Zach confirmed. "Last cattle drive to Sacramento cleared enough to cover expenses for the year with some put by. We're building the herd quality through selective breeding, which will pay off in the long run." "And your position here?" Olivia asked directly. "My father's letter mentioned a foreman, but not that the foreman was also caring for his children." Zach's expression tightened. "When a leaner died, Thomas was devastated. I helped where I could. When he fell ill, he asked me to look after everything until you arrived. I gave him my word. And now that I'm here, that's for you to decide," he said simply. "It's your ranch now." Before Olivia could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Through the window, she saw Benjamin Walsh dismounting from his horse, accompanied by another man in a black suit. "Walsh has brought Judge Parker with him," Zach observed, standing. "They'll have your father's will." Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety as she rose to greet the visitors. Whatever the will contained would determine her future and the futures of her infant siblings. Judge Parker was a portly man with spectacles and a dignified manner. After introductions, they gathered around the dining table with papers spread before them. "Your father's will is straightforward, Miss Owens," Judge Parker explained. "Cottonwood Ranch and all associated assets are to be divided equally between you and the twins. However, as the twins are minors, you are named their legal guardian with full authority to manage their portion of the estate until they reach majority." Olivia sat stunned. "I'm their guardian. But I barely knew my father in recent years. Surely there's someone more appropriate." "Your father was explicit," Walsh interjected. "He wanted his children raised together by family." "There is one additional provision," Judge Parker continued, adjusting his spectacles, "regarding Mr. Irwin." Zach, who had been standing quietly by the window, turned his attention to the judge. Thomas Owens stipulated that Zachary Irwin should remain as ranch foreman with a 20% share of annual profits, provided he remains at Cottonwood for a minimum of 5 years after Thomas's death. Olivia glanced at Zach, who appeared as surprised as she felt. "My father clearly valued your contributions," she said carefully. "There's more," Judge Parker added. "The will states that if you choose to sell the ranch, Mr. Irwin must be offered first opportunity to purchase it at a fair market price." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Olivia's plans to quickly settle the estate and return to San Francisco had been thoroughly upended. She was now responsible for 2 infants and a working ranch, with a cowboy who apparently held her father's absolute trust. "I'll need time to consider all this," Olivia finally said. "Of course," Walsh nodded, "but there are decisions that can't wait. The children need care and the ranch requires management." "Nothing needs to be decided this minute," Zach interjected firmly. "Miss Owens just arrived. She deserves time to get her bearings." Walsh and the judge exchanged glances. "Very well," Judge Parker said, gathering his papers. "Review these documents at your leisure, Miss Owens. Mr. Walsh knows where to find me when you're ready to formalize arrangements." After the men departed, Olivia remained at the table, staring at the papers before her. Zach poured her a cup of coffee and set it near her hand. "I never expected any of this," she admitted. "I came to settle affairs, not to become a mother and a rancher overnight." "Your father believed you were capable of both," Zach said quietly. Olivia looked up at him. "And what do you believe, Mr. Irwin?" "I believe Thomas Owens knew his daughter better than she thinks he did." With that, Zach placed his hat on his head. "I need to check the south pasture." "I'll be back before dinner." Left alone, Olivia wandered upstairs to the nursery where Martha was folding tiny garments. The twins lay sleeping in a shared cradle, their faces peaceful in slumber. "They're beautiful children," Martha observed, following Olivia's gaze. "Look just like their mama, but they've got your father's chin, both of them." "Martha, how did you come to work here?" Olivia asked. "I was Aline's midwife," the woman explained. "When she passed, Mr. Owens asked me to stay on to care for the babies. I've nowhere else to go, and I've grown mighty fond of the little ones." "I'm grateful you're here," Olivia said sincerely. "I'll need your guidance in caring for them." "And Mr. Irwin's," Martha added pointedly. "Don't let his rough exterior fool you, Miss Owens. That man has a gentler touch with these babies than many a woman I've known. He's been their constant since your father fell ill." Olivia spent the afternoon acquainting herself with the twins' routines and exploring the house that would now be her home. It was solidly built, with 4 bedrooms upstairs and comfortable, if simple, furnishings throughout. Her father's personal effects had been packed away, she discovered, but a photograph of herself as a child still sat on his desk, alongside a newer one of Aline holding the newborn twins. As promised, Zach returned before dinner, bringing with him Eduardo Vasquez, the remaining ranch hand. Eduardo was a slender man of about 40 with a quiet dignity and keen, observant eyes. He spoke excellent English and clearly knew every aspect of the ranch operations. Dinner was a communal affair, with the ranch hands joining them at the large table. Martha served a hearty beef stew with fresh bread, and conversation flowed easily as the men discussed the day's work and plans for the following week. Olivia found herself drawn into discussions of cattle breeding and water management, subjects she had never imagined would interest her. Throughout the meal, she observed Zach's interactions with the others. Though he spoke little when he did, everyone listened. There was obvious respect in the way the other men deferred to him, not from fear but from genuine regard for his judgment. After dinner, as the men retired to the bunkhouse, Olivia helped Martha wash the dishes while Zach tended to the twins' evening feeding. She found herself continually distracted by the sight of the tall cowboy gently cradling first one baby, then the other, his large hands surprisingly deft with the tiny bottles Martha had prepared. Later, after Martha had gone to her small room off the kitchen, Olivia joined Zach by the fireplace where he sat watching over the sleeping infants in their basket. "You're good with them," she observed, taking the chair opposite his. Had plenty of practice these past months, he replied, his eyes on the flames. Martha tells me you've barely slept in weeks, he shrugged. They needed looking after. Why? Olivia asked bluntly. Why take on such responsibility for another man's children? Surely hired help could have been brought in. Zach's gaze shifted to her, steady and uncompromising. I gave Thomas my word I'd protect what mattered to him. These babies and this ranch mattered more than anything. And what about your own life, your own plans? Something flickered across his face, regret, perhaps, or resignation. I was a cavalry officer in the war, Miss Owens. Saw things no man should see. Did things I'll answer for someday. When it ended, I drifted west with no particular purpose. Your father gave me meaningful work and treated me like a man worth respecting. He looked back at the twins. This is my life now, these are my plans. Until I arrived, Olivia said softly, you're their blood kin, their rightful guardian, I understand that. I know nothing about ranching, she admitted. And while I have experience with children, raising twins alone would be challenging in the best circumstances. You're not alone, Zach said simply. Not unless you choose to be. Their eyes met across the warm glow of the fireplace, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of shared purpose, perhaps, or the first fragile threads of understanding. I should get them to bed, Zach said, breaking the moment as he rose and carefully lifted the basket. I can help, Olivia offered, standing as well. Together, they carried the sleeping twins upstairs to the nursery and settled them in their cradle. Standing side by side in the dim lamplight, watching the baby's peaceful slumber, Olivia felt an unexpected sense of rightness, as if pieces of a puzzle were slowly finding their places. Good night, Mr. Irwin, she said softly as they stepped into the hallway. Zach, he reminded her gently. Sleep well, Miss Owens. Olivia, she corrected with a small smile. If we're to raise these children together, at least for now, we should use our given names. He nodded once, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Olivia, then, tomorrow's Sunday. We don't work the cattle, but there are still chores. I'll be by at dawn for the twins' first feeding. As she prepared for bed, Olivia's mind whirled with the day's revelations and the decision that loomed before her. Could she truly abandon her life in San Francisco to raise her half-siblings on a Nevada cattle ranch? And what of Zachary Irwin, the enigmatic cowboy who had so unexpectedly become entangled in her fate's sleep, came easier that night, her exhaustion finally overtaking her confusion. But her dreams were filled with images of strong hands cradling tiny forms and intense blue eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed defenses. The following weeks established a rhythm to life at Cottonwood Ranch. Olivia found herself rising with the dawn, helping with the twins' morning feeding, then assisting Martha with household tasks while Zach and the other men attended to the ranch work. In the afternoons, she immersed herself in her father's ledgers and correspondence, building a clearer picture of the enterprise he had created. May turned to June, and the Nevada landscape bloomed briefly with wildflowers before the summer heat began to bake the earth. Olivia wrote to her landlady in San Francisco, arranging for her few possessions to be shipped to Reno. It wasn't a final commitment to staying, she told herself, just a practical measure while she decided. The twins grew stronger each day. Sam was the quieter of the two, content to watch the world with solemn eyes, while Sarah was more demanding, quick to voice her displeasure when her needs weren't immediately met. Both babies responded to Zach's deep voice with obvious delight, calming instantly when he held them. They know who's been there for them from the beginning, Martha observed one evening as Zach walked the floor with a fussy Sarah, humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like a cavalry march. Olivia couldn't deny the bond between the cowboy and the infants. It was evident in every interaction, the confident way he bathed them, the gentle patience he showed when they were difficult, the fierce protectiveness when a summer storm frightened them. Equally undeniable was Zach's competence in managing the ranch. Olivia often accompanied him on his rounds, learning about cattle breeding, water management, and the endless maintenance required to keep a working ranch functioning. He was a patient teacher, never condescending, always willing to explain the why behind the what. "You have a good eye for horseflesh," he commented one afternoon as they inspected a new foal. "You ride." "Not since I was a girl," Olivia admitted. "Father taught me before he left." The next morning, she found Zach waiting by the corral with a gentle bay mare saddled and ready. "Time you got reacquainted with the saddle," he said. "Can't properly run a cattle ranch without riding the land." Their morning rides became a routine an hour before the heat of the day set in, exploring the boundaries of cottonwood and assessing the condition of the grass, water, and livestock. Olivia's confidence grew with each outing, as did her appreciation for the beauty of the land her father had chosen. It was during one such ride in late June that their relationship shifted. They had ridden to the highest point on the property, a gentle rise that offered views across the entire valley. Dismounting to rest the horses, they stood side by side, surveying the patchwork of pastures and the silver thread of the creek winding through cottonwoods. "I never understood why he left us for this," Olivia said quietly, "but standing here I'm beginning to." "Thomas spoke of you often," Zach said, "regretted the rift between you." "He wrote me countless letters in those early years," she admitted. "I returned them unopened. My pride wouldn't let me forgive him for abandoning my mother and me. And now," Olivia turned to face him, "now I see a man who built something of value, who found love again and fathered two beautiful children, who trusted his firstborn daughter enough to place those children in her care." "He knew what he was doing," Zach said, his blue eyes steady on hers. "You've taken to ranching like you were born to it." "I've had an excellent teacher," she replied with a small smile. Something changed in Zach's expression, then a softening around the eyes, a tension in his jaw. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might reach for her. Instead, he turned back to the horses. "Storm's coming," he said, nodding toward dark clouds building over the western mountains. "We should head back." They rode hard, racing the approaching weather, but the storm moved faster. Lightning split the sky as fat raindrops began to fall. By the time they reached the grove of cottonwoods along the creek, a quarter-mile from the house, they were soaked through. "Under here." Zach called over the rumble of thunder, guiding his horse beneath the thick canopy of an ancient cottonwood. Olivia followed, grateful for even the partial shelter. Dismounting, she pushed wet hair from her face and laughed despite herself. "So much for our peaceful morning ride." Zach's answering smile transformed his face, erasing the habitual seriousness and revealing a glimpse of the younger man he must have been before the war. "Summer storms pass quickly here," he said, securing the horse's reins to a low branch. They stood close together beneath the tree, watching the rain pound the dusty earth into mud. The air smelled of wet sage and cottonwood bark, clean and primal. Olivia was acutely aware of Zach beside her, the sound of his breathing, the heat of him despite his wet clothes, the way his white shirt clung to the muscles of his chest and arms. "You're shivering," he observed, concern edging his voice. "Just the rain," she assured him, though the trembling had less to do with cold than with his proximity. Zach shrugged out of his vest and draped it around her shoulders. As he adjusted it, his fingers brushed her neck, sending a jolt of awareness through her that had nothing to do with the storm. Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to charge with the same electricity that crackled overhead. For a long moment, neither moved, caught in a silent communication more profound than words. A particularly loud thunderclap broke the spell. Zach stepped back, his expression shuddering. "We should make a run for it when the rain eases," he said, his voice rougher than usual. Olivia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. What was happening between them? This man was her employee, her partner in caring for the twins, perhaps even her friend, but the feelings stirring within her were decidedly not friendly. The rain diminished to a gentle patter, and they remounted, riding the remaining distance to the ranch in silence. At the barn, Zach helped her down from her horse, his hands strong and sure around her waist. For just a moment he held her there, suspended between the ground and his grip, their faces inches apart. "Olivia," he began, his voice low. "There you are," Martha's voice called from the house porch. "I was getting worried. The babies are awake and hungry." Zach released her immediately, stepping back. "See to the twins," he said. "I'll take care of the horses." That evening, Olivia found concentration impossible as she attempted to balance the monthly accounts. Her mind kept returning to that moment beneath the cottonwood, the look in Zach's eyes, the tension in his body, the words he might have spoken if they hadn't been interrupted. A knock at the office door startled her. "Come in," she called, expecting Martha with evening coffee. Instead, it was Zach who entered, his hair still damp from his evening wash, wearing a clean shirt and his usual worn denims. "Eduardo rode into town for supplies tomorrow," he said. "Anything specific you need?" "Just the usual staples," Olivia replied, trying to maintain a normal tone. "And perhaps more fabric for the twins' gowns. They're growing so quickly." Zach nodded, then hesitated. "About today, yes." Olivia's heart quickened. "I apologize if I overstepped. It won't happen again." Disappointment flooded her. "You did nothing improper, Zach." Nevertheless. His expression was carefully neutral. "You're Thomas Owens's daughter and the twins' guardian. My responsibility is to the ranch and to honoring my promise to your father." "And if my wishes differ from my father's?" Olivia asked boldly. Zach's gaze sharpened. "What are you asking, Olivia?" Before she could answer, Sam's wail echoed from upstairs, followed immediately by Sarah's. The moment broken, Zach stepped back. "The twins need you," he said simply, then turned and left. Olivia sat for a long moment, frustration warring with confusion. Then, gathering her resolve, she went upstairs to tend to her siblings. July brought scorching heat to the Nevada desert and increasing tension to Cottonwood Ranch. Zach maintained a careful distance from Olivia, interacting with her only when necessary and always in the presence of others. He continued to assist with the twins and manage the ranch operations, but the easy camaraderie they had developed was gone. Olivia threw herself into ranch work, determined to prove her commitment to Cottonwood. She learned to mend fences, helped with the branding of late calves, and even assisted Eduardo in breaking a particularly stubborn colt. Her skin bronzed under the Nevada sun, and her hands grew calloused from work. The twins continued to thrive, now sitting up with minimal support and babbling their first consonant sounds. Sam clearly favored Zach, quieting instantly whenever the tall cowboy entered a room. Sarah, on the other hand, had developed a particular attachment to Olivia, reaching for her with chubby hands and offering wet, open-mouthed kisses. "They need a proper family," Martha observed one evening as Olivia rocked Sarah to sleep. "A mother and a father." "They have me," Olivia replied defensively. "And Zach. For now," Martha said pointedly. "But what happens when you return to San Francisco? Or when Mr. Irwin decides he's fulfilled his obligation and moves on?" The thought of either possibility created a hollow ache in Olivia's chest. When had these two infants and this harsh, beautiful land become so essential to her? And when had the stoic cowboy who kept them all together become someone she couldn't imagine life without? The annual Reno Independence Day celebration provided a welcome distraction. The entire household, including the ranch hands, traveled to town for the festivities. Olivia wore her best dress, a green calico that Martha had altered to accommodate her son's bronzed arms and slightly thicker waist, the result of Martha's excellent cooking. Reno was transformed with bunting and flags, the streets crowded with ranchers, miners, and townspeople all enjoying the rare holiday. There was a parade in the morning, followed by various competitions: horseshoes, shooting, pie baking, and more. Olivia carried Sarah while Zach held Sam as they walked through the fairgrounds. People constantly stopped them, cooing over the twins and offering congratulations, assuming they were a family. Neither Olivia nor Zach corrected the misunderstanding. They make a handsome couple, Olivia overheard an older woman comment to her companion. And those babies are just precious. The little boy is the spitting image of his father. Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks, but a glance at Zach revealed no reaction. He was focused on Sam, adjusting the baby's hat to shield his fair skin from the sun. The day progressed pleasantly until mid-afternoon when a commotion near the saloon drew everyone's attention. A group of miners, already deep in their cups, were becoming rowdy. As Olivia and Zach passed with the twins, one of the men staggered into their path. "Well, ain't you a pretty little thing?" the miner slurred, focusing bloodshot eyes on Olivia. "Too pretty to be stuck with a scar-faced cowboy and a couple of brats." Zach stepped forward, positioning himself between Olivia and the drunk. "Move along, friend," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "You're frightening the children. Ain't your friend," the miner spat. "And I was talking to the lady." He attempted to reach around Zach toward Olivia. In a movement so swift it was nearly a blur, Zach handed Sam to Eduardo, who had materialized beside them, then seized the miner by his shirt front. "The lady isn't interested in conversation," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Now walk away while you still can." The miner's face purpled with rage. "You threatening me, cowboy?" His hand dropped to the knife at his belt. "Zach," Olivia said urgently, clutching Sarah tighter. "He's not worth it." For a tense moment, Olivia thought Zach might strike the man. Instead, he released him with a small shove. "Go sleep it off," he advised. The miner stumbled backward, then straightened, rage contorting his features. With a roar, he lunged forward, knife drawn. Zach moved with the precision of a man well versed in violence. He sidestepped the attack, caught the miner's wrist, and twisted. The knife fell to the dust as the man howled in pain. A quick sweep of Zach's leg and the miner was on the ground, Zach's knee in his back. "That's enough." The sheriff's voice cut through the crowd that had gathered. "Irwin, let him up." Zach rose smoothly, stepping back as the sheriff and his deputy took charge of the cursing miner. "He was defending us, Sheriff," Olivia said quickly. "That man threatened us with a knife. Saw the whole thing," the lawman assured her. "Don't worry, Miss Owens. This one's been causing trouble all day. He'll cool off in my jail." As the crowd dispersed, Zach reclaimed Sam from Eduardo. His face was impassive, but Olivia could see tension in the set of his shoulders. "Thank you," she said quietly as they walked away, "for protecting us." Zach merely nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd as if anticipating further threats. "Perhaps we should return to the ranch," Olivia suggested, noting how the incident had unsettled both babies. "Probably wise," Zach agreed. The ride back to Cottonwood was subdued, the festive mood dampened by the confrontation. Martha took charge of the twins upon their return, leaving Olivia and Zach standing awkwardly in the yard. "You handled that situation efficiently," Olivia finally said. "Army training," Zach replied tersely. "Some skills you don't forget. You could have seriously hurt him." "Could have killed him," Zach corrected bluntly. "Chose not to." The matter-of-fact way he said it sent a chill through Olivia despite the evening heat. She was reminded that this man, who so gently cared for infant twins, had once been a soldier in a brutal war. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "Knowing you have that capacity," Zach's gaze met hers, unflinching. "Every day. Is that why you keep your distance from me?" His expression tightened. "I keep my distance because it's appropriate. You're my employer." "Is that the only reason?" Olivia pressed. For a long moment, Zach said nothing, his blue eyes searching her face. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from deep within, he said, "No. It's not the only reason." "Then what? I'm not the kind of man who can offer you what you deserve," he interrupted. "I've got blood on my hands that will never wash clean. I wake some nights still hearing the screams of men I've killed. I have nothing but my word and the skills your father valued." He stepped back. "You're an educated woman from a city. You could return there, find a proper husband, give the twins a respectable name." "Is that what you think I want?" Olivia asked, indignation rising. To return to a life of genteel poverty in San Francisco, to marry some shopkeeper or clerk who knows nothing of what matters to me now. What does matter to you now? Zach asked, his voice low. This ranch, the twins, the life we've built here. She took a step toward him. You. Zach's breath caught audibly. Olivia, I'm not asking for promises, she said quickly. I'm just asking you to stop pretending there's nothing between us. For one heartbeat, then two, Zach remained utterly still. Then, slowly, deliberately, he closed the distance between them. His hand, calloused and warm, came up to cup her cheek. There's everything between us, he said roughly. That's the problem. When his lips finally met hers, it was with a restraint that spoke of long-held control finally breaking. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, but quickly deepened as Olivia responded. Her hands found his shoulders, then slid up to the nape of his neck, feeling the soft curl of his hair there. Zach broke the kiss first, pulling back just enough to rest his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he murmured. Life is complicated, Olivia replied, her heart racing, but this us feels like the simplest truth I know. A smile touched his lips then, rare and transformative. You Owens women, he said, stubborn as they come, you've known more than one of us. She teased, not pulling away from his embrace. Your stepmother was just as determined, he said. Told Thomas she'd marry him 2 weeks after they met, said she recognized a good man when she found one and wasn't about to let him slip away. Smart woman, Olivia said softly. The sound of the front door opening caused them to step apart. Martha appeared, holding Sarah. This little miss refuses to settle without her sister, she announced, then stopped, her gaze moving between them. A knowing smile crossed her face. Well, it's about time. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but Zach merely chuckled. We'll be right in, he said. As Martha retreated with a satisfied nod, Zach turned back to Olivia. We should talk about what this means, he said seriously. For us, for the twins, for the ranch. Yes, she agreed, but not tonight. Tonight, let's just be, he suggested. She nodded, relieved at his understanding. That night, after the twins were finally asleep, Olivia and Zach sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Nevada sky. They talked of small things, memories of childhood, favorite horses, books they had read. When Olivia shivered in the cooling night air, Zach wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her against his side. I never imagined finding this here, she admitted, her head resting against his shoulder. What's that? Peace, she said simply. Purpose, someone who understands both. Zach's arm tightened around her. I never imagined finding it anywhere. When he kissed her again under the starlit sky, Olivia felt as if all the pieces of her fragmented life were finally aligning into a pattern that made sense. The following weeks brought a deepening of their relationship, though both were careful to maintain propriety for the sake of the ranch hands and the twins. They continued their morning rides, now accompanied by stolen kisses in secluded groves of trees. In the evenings, after the twins were asleep, they would sit together on the porch or by the fire, planning the ranch's future and cautiously sharing more of their pasts. Olivia learned of Zach's childhood in Pennsylvania, his father's harness shop, and his impulsive enlistment in the Union cavalry at 19. He spoke sparingly of the war itself, but she came to understand the demons that sometimes haunted his sleep. In turn, she told him of her mother's long illness, her father's desperate search for opportunity in the West, and her years of lonely self-reliance in San Francisco. She spoke of her bitterness toward her father and her gradual understanding of the man he had become. I wish I'd known him as you did, she said one evening as they reviewed breeding records for the coming year. The man who built this place seems so different from the father who left us. People change, Zach observed, sometimes for the better. August brought the hottest days of summer and final preparations for the fall cattle drive to Sacramento. Zach spent long days in the saddle, working with the Peterson brothers and Eduardo to ensure the herd was ready. Olivia took on more responsibility for the ranch accounts, discovering an aptitude for business that surprised her. The twins continued to develop, now crawling with determination and pulling themselves up on furniture. Sam had mastered da-da, which he used indiscriminately for any male figure, while Sarah had a repertoire of sounds that seemed to constitute her own private language. It was during this busy period that Benjamin Walsh rode out to Cottonwood with news that would alter their carefully balanced world. "I've had an inquiry about the ranch," the attorney announced over coffee in the main room. "A rather substantial offer from the Western Pacific Railroad. They're planning a spur line from Reno to Carson City and are interested in acquiring properties along the proposed route." Olivia glanced at Zach, whose expression had gone carefully neutral. "We're not interested in selling," she said firmly. "You might want to consider the figure before dismissing it out of hand," Walsh advised, sliding a folded paper across the table. Olivia opened it, then drew in a sharp breath at the number written there. It was more than twice what her father had invested in the property. "That's substantial," she admitted. "It would provide very comfortably for you and the twins," Walsh pointed out. "You could return to San Francisco or settle anywhere you chose." "The ranch isn't for sale," Zach stated flatly, rising from his chair. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to attend to." After he had gone, Walsh leaned forward. "Miss Owens, I understand you've developed an attachment to this place, but you must consider the twins' future. This kind of opportunity doesn't come along often." "I am considering their future," Olivia replied. "This is their heritage, the land their father built where their mother is buried." "And what of your attachment to Mr. Irwin?" Walsh asked shrewdly. "The entire county is talking about it. Do you think a former cavalry officer with no prospects beyond this ranch is a suitable match for Thomas Owens's daughter?" Olivia's spine stiffened. "My personal life is not a matter for county discussion, Mr. Walsh, nor is it relevant to my decision about the ranch. Isn't it?" The attorney gathered his hat. "Consider the offer, Miss Owens. You have until the end of the month to decide." After Walsh departed, Olivia sought out Zach, finding him in the barn repairing tack with methodical precision. "You're considering it," he said without looking up, his hands continuing their steady work. "I'm not," she corrected. "But I would be foolish not to acknowledge the magnitude of the offer. It's a fair price for the land," Zach conceded. "More than fair." "This isn't about money," Olivia said, moving closer. "This is our home, yours, mine, the twins." Zach finally looked up, his blue eyes troubled. "Is it?" "My home, I mean. I work here, Olivia. I care for the twins because I promised Thomas I would, and I love you, God knows I do, but that doesn't make this my home." The frank admission of love, the first time either had spoken it aloud, momentarily stole Olivia's breath. "It could be," she said softly. "Your home, permanently," understanding dawned in Zach's eyes. "Olivia, are you asking, I'm suggesting," she interrupted, suddenly nervous, "that perhaps there's a way to secure all our futures, together." Zach set aside the bridle he'd been mending and rose to his full height. "Are you proposing to me, Olivia Owens?" A smile tugged at her lips despite her racing heart. "I believe I am, Zachary Irwin." For a long moment he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "No," he said gently. Pain lanced through Olivia's chest. "No, not like this," he clarified. "Not with the railroad offer hanging over us. Not with Walsh's implications about my suitability still ringing in your ears." He squeezed her hands. "When I ask you to be my wife, and I will ask, make no mistake, it will be because it's right for us, not because it solves a problem or secures the ranch." Relief and frustration warred within her. "You are the most infuriating man," she said, though there was no heat in her words. "So I've been told," he replied, a rare smile softening his features. "Give Walsh his answer. Make your decision about the ranch based on what's best for you and the twins, then we'll talk about us." Olivia wanted to argue, to insist that their futures were already inextricably linked, but she recognized the wisdom in his approach. Instead, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a quick kiss to his lips. Very well, Mr. Irwin, we'll do this your way. For now. That evening, Olivia penned a firm rejection of the railroad's offer, instructing Walsh to inform them that Cottonwood Ranch was not for sale at any price. As she sealed the envelope, a profound sense of rightness settled over her. This was where she belonged, where they all belonged. September arrived with cooler nights and the beginning of fall roundup. The cattle drive to Sacramento was scheduled for early October, and preparations consumed every waking hour. Zach would lead the drive with the Peterson brothers and 2 additional hands hired for the season, leaving Eduardo to manage the ranch with Olivia. The night before Zach's departure, after the twins were asleep and Martha had retired to her room, he found Olivia on the porch swing, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the evening chill. "Everything's set for tomorrow," he said, settling beside her. "We'll be gone 3 weeks, maybe 4 if the weather turns." "So long," Olivia couldn't hide her dismay. "It's a good-sized herd this year," he explained, "and we'll need to negotiate with the buyers in Sacramento." "I'll miss you," she said simply. "The twins will too." "And I'll miss all of you." He reached into his pocket. "Which is why I wanted to give you this tonight, rather than in the morning with everyone watching." He held out a small object that gleamed in the lamplight, a ring with a modest diamond set in gold. "Zach," Olivia breathed, her heart stuttering. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "The only thing of value I kept when I left home. I've carried it through the war, across the country, never thinking I'd have cause to give it to anyone." He took her hand. "Olivia Owens, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Zach's usually steady hands trembled slightly. "It's not grand," he apologized. "Not what a woman like you deserves." "It's perfect," she assured him, admiring how the simple stone caught the lamplight. "As is the man giving it to me." Their kiss held the promise of a future together, tempered by the knowledge of their impending separation. When they finally parted, Zach rested his forehead against hers. "I thought we might marry when I return," he suggested, "before winter sets in." "So soon?" Olivia asked, though her heart leapt at the idea. "I've wasted enough time keeping my distance from you," he said. "I don't intend to waste any more." They spent another hour on the porch, making plans for their wedding and their future. Zach spoke of improvements he envisioned for the ranch, expanding the herd, breeding finer stock, perhaps adding sheep on the higher pastures. Olivia shared her ideas for enhancing the house, creating a proper schoolroom for the twins, and expanding the garden. When they finally said goodnight, Olivia clutched her new ring and watched Zach walk toward the bunkhouse, his tall figure silhouetted against the star-filled sky. The weight of the ring on her finger was unfamiliar but deeply right, a tangible symbol of the life they would build together. The following morning brought organized chaos as the cattle drive preparations reached their culmination. The herd, 200 strong, was gathered in the south pasture, with the drovers ready to move them out at first light. Wagons were loaded with supplies, horses saddled, and last-minute instructions exchanged. Olivia stood in the yard with the twins, who watched the activity with wide eyes. Sam squirmed in her arms, reaching toward Zach as he approached for his farewell. "Hey there, partner," Zach said, taking the boy from Olivia. "You be good for your sister while I'm gone, you hear?" Sam patted Zach's face with chubby hands, babbling earnestly as if offering his own instructions for the journey. Sarah, not to be outdone, reached for Zach as well, and soon he had both twins in his arms, their small faces pressed against his chest. The scene struck Olivia with its poignant echo of her first night at Cottonwood, finding Zach asleep in the rocking chair, a twin in each arm, too tired to breathe. How far they had all come since that night. "They'll miss you terribly," she said, blinking back tears. "I'll be back before they have a chance to forget me," he promised, then reluctantly handed the babies back to Olivia and Martha. Turning to Eduardo, he clasped the man's hand. "You know what needs doing. I trust your judgment if anything unexpected comes up." "See, Chief," Eduardo nodded. We will manage until your return." Finally, Zach turned to Olivia. In front of the assembled ranch hands, he kept his farewell appropriately restrained, merely taking her hand briefly. But his eyes conveyed everything his words could not. "Take care of our family," he said softly. "Come back to us safely," she replied. With a final nod, Zach mounted his horse and gave the signal to move out. The cattle began to flow from the pasture onto the trail, guided by the skilled riders. Olivia stood with the twins in the yard, watching until the dust cloud that marked their passage disappeared from view. The days that followed settled into a quieter rhythm. Without Zach and the others, the ranch was subdued, though there was still plenty of work to occupy them. Eduardo proved himself capable and reliable, handling the daily operations while consulting Olivia on any significant decisions. Martha was a constant support with the twins, who seemed to sense the change in the household. They were more fractious than usual, particularly at night, as if missing the deep voice and strong arms that had been part of their world since birth. "They're missing their papa," Martha observed one evening as Olivia walked the floor with a fussing Sam. "He's not," Olivia began automatically, then stopped. "Yes, I suppose he is, in all the ways that matter. Will you make it official? After the wedding, I mean?" Olivia hadn't considered the possibility of Zach formally adopting the twins, but the idea resonated deeply. "I think we will," she said. "They deserve his name as much as I do." 2 weeks after the cattle drive departed, a letter arrived from Zach. His handwriting was neat and precise, reflecting his methodical nature, and Olivia treasured each carefully chosen word. The drive was proceeding well, he reported. The weather had been cooperative, and they anticipated reaching Sacramento within the week. "I miss you and the little ones more than I can express on paper," he wrote. "At night, when the herd is settled and the camp is quiet, I find myself reaching for Sam's wooden horse to place it back in his bed, or listening for Sarah's midnight complaints. Most of all, I miss your smile across the breakfast table and our conversations on the porch swing. I never imagined I could miss someone as I miss you now." Olivia read the letter multiple times, tracing her fingers over the words as if to absorb them through her skin. She wrote back immediately, describing the twins' latest achievements, Sam's first steps, Sarah's growing vocabulary, and the preparations she had begun for their wedding. "Martha is helping me alter my mother's wedding dress," she wrote. "It's simple but elegant, with lace at the collar and cuffs that she's carefully preserved all these years. The twins are thriving but missing you terribly. Sam carries your hat around the house, refusing to relinquish it even at bedtime. Sarah has taken to standing by the window, watching the road as if expecting your return at any moment. As for me, I find I've grown accustomed to your quiet strength beside me, and its absence leaves a space that nothing else can fill." Life continued its steady pace at Cottonwood. Olivia met with Benjamin Walsh to discuss formally changing the ranch's ownership to include Zach as an equal partner rather than merely a profit-sharing employee. The attorney seemed unsurprised by the development. "I suspected as much when you rejected the railroad's offer," he admitted. "Your father would approve, I think. He held Mr. Irwin in the highest regard." As October progressed, Olivia found herself constantly calculating when Zach might return. The cattle drive should have reached Sacramento by now, the sales should be complete or nearly so, and the men would be on their way home. Then came the news that changed everything. Eduardo returned from Reno with supplies and a grim expression. "There's word in town," he said hesitantly. "About the cattle drive," Olivia's heart stuttered. "What word?" "They were caught in an early snowstorm in the Sierras, lost some cattle, and there were injuries." Eduardo twisted his hat in his hands. "They say Mr. Irwin was hurt, bad." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. "How bad? Who told you this?" "Telegraphed to the sheriff from the authorities in Placerville," Eduardo explained. "They're bringing the injured men there for treatment." Without hesitation, Olivia began issuing orders. Eduardo, prepare the buckboard. Martha, pack provisions for a journey. I'll need you to stay with the twins. She turned to the bunkhouse, where two young hands had been left to help with the ranch. Miguel, ride to town and send a telegram to the doctor in Placerville. Tell him I'm coming for my fiancé and to provide him with the best care available. Miss Owens, Eduardo said gently, it's a hard journey to Placerville this time of year. The mountains, I'm well aware of the difficulties, Olivia interrupted, but I will not sit here waiting for news when Zach needs me. We leave in an hour. The journey to Placerville was every bit as challenging as Eduardo had warned. The early storm had left snow in the higher passes, turning the roads to mud as it melted. They traveled as quickly as conditions allowed, stopping only when absolutely necessary for rest and food. Olivia's mind raced with possibilities, each more terrible than the last. What if Zach's injuries were life-threatening? What if he was already gone by the time she reached him? The thought was unbearable, a physical pain that squeezed her chest until breathing became difficult. They reached Placerville on the third day, exhausted and mud-splattered. The small mining town was bustling despite the weather, with the main street crowded with wagons and horses. Olivia directed Eduardo to the doctor's office, a modest building near the center of town. The physician, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, met them at the door. Miss Owens, I received your telegram. Mr. Irwin is here. How is he? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Stable, but his injuries are serious, the doctor replied. Broken leg, several broken ribs, and a concussion. He was caught in a rockslide during the storm. Will he recover? With proper care and time, yes, but the journey back to Nevada is out of the question for at least a month, possibly longer. Relief made Olivia's knees weak. Zach was alive. Injured but alive. I want to see him, she said. The doctor led her to a small room at the back of his office. There, on a narrow bed, lay Zach. His right leg was splinted and elevated, his torso wrapped in bandages, and a bruise darkened the left side of his face. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Zach, Olivia whispered, moving to his bedside and taking his hand. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then clearing as they settled on her face. Olivia, his voice was rough with disuse. You shouldn't be here. The twins are perfectly fine with Martha, she assured him, squeezing his hand. Did you think I would stay away when you were hurt? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Stubborn woman. You have no idea, she replied, blinking back tears of relief. The doctor says you'll recover, but it will take time. The herd, Eduardo tells me, Will Peterson brought them through and completed the sales, Olivia said. The money is safe in the Sacramento bank, waiting for your signature. The other hands are returning to the ranch. Zach's expression tightened. I've put you in a difficult position. No, Olivia corrected gently. Life has put us in a challenging situation which we will face together as we have everything else. Over the next few days, Olivia arranged for Zach's care. The doctor's house had a small attached apartment, which she rented for what would clearly be an extended stay. Eduardo returned to Cottonwood with instructions for Martha and the remaining hands on managing the ranch in their absence. Tell the twins their papa will be home as soon as he's well, Olivia instructed as Eduardo prepared to leave, and that we both miss them terribly. With Zach unable to travel, they adjusted their plans. The wedding would have to wait until they returned to Cottonwood. For now, Olivia focused on helping Zach regain his strength, reading to him during long afternoons and assisting with the painful process of learning to use crutches. As October turned to November, Zach's recovery progressed steadily. The concussion symptoms faded, and his ribs began to heal, though the broken leg would keep him immobile for weeks yet. The forced inactivity chafed at him, and Olivia often found him staring out the window with a restlessness he couldn't quite conceal. You're thinking about the ranch, she observed one evening as they shared a simple dinner in their rented rooms. Among other things, he admitted, winter's coming. There's so much that should be done before the heavy snows. Eduardo is capable, Olivia reminded him. And we left clear instructions. It's not the same as being there, Zach said, frustration edging his voice. I promised your father I'd look after the place, and you have, she assured him. But right now your job is to heal. Zach set down his fork. I've been thinking, Olivia. Perhaps we should send for the twins, bring them here until I'm well enough to travel. The suggestion took her by surprise. The journey would be difficult for them, especially with winter coming. More difficult than being separated from both of us for months, Zach asked quietly. They've already lost 2 parents. I don't want them thinking we've abandoned them too. Olivia's heart twisted at the thought. You're right, she conceded, but who would bring them? Eduardo is needed at the ranch and I won't leave you. Walsh could arrange it, Zach suggested. Hire a reliable woman to accompany them on the stage to Placerville. After considering the proposal, Olivia agreed. She wrote to Walsh immediately, explaining the situation and requesting his assistance in bringing the twins to Placerville. She included a letter for Martha as well, with detailed instructions for preparing the babies for the journey. 2 weeks later, the stage coach from Reno arrived with precious cargo Sam and Sarah, accompanied by a competent middle-aged woman Walsh had engaged as their temporary nurse. The reunion was emotional for all. The twins, now nearly 10 months old, had grown noticeably in the weeks of separation. Sam took faltering steps toward Zach, while Sarah clung to Olivia, burying her face in her sister's neck. They've missed you something fierce, the nurse reported. Especially the little man there. Wouldn't sleep through the night for missing his papa. Zach, still confined to a chair with his leg extended, gathered Sam into his lap with visible emotion. Hey there, partner, he said softly, his voice rougher than usual. I've missed you too. With the twins' arrival, their rented apartment became a home of sorts. The nurse, Mrs. Holbrook, agreed to stay on to help with the children while Olivia continued to assist Zach with his recovery. They established new routines, adapting to the constraints of their temporary situation with the resilience they had both developed through lives of challenge. December arrived with snow and preparations for Christmas. The doctor finally removed Zach's splint, replacing it with a less restrictive brace that allowed him more mobility with his crutches. Though still weeks away from being able to ride or handle ranch work, he was visibly relieved by the progress. The doctor thinks we might be able to travel back to Cottonwood by late January, Olivia told him as they watched the twins playing on a quilt before the fire. Not soon enough, Zach replied, though his expression was thoughtful rather than frustrated. But it gives us time for something else I've been considering. What's that? Getting married here, he suggested. Before Christmas. Olivia looked up in surprise. Here, without our friends from the ranch. I know it's not what we planned, Zach acknowledged. But I've been thinking about what you said to Eduardo before you left, telling the twins their papa would be home soon. He reached for her hand. I want to make that official, Olivia. I want to be their father in every way that matters. I want us to be a real family before we return to Cottonwood. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. I want that too, she admitted. More than anything. 2 weeks later, on a clear, cold December morning, Olivia Owens and Zachary Irwin were married in Placerville's small church. She wore a simple blue dress rather than her mother's wedding gown, and he stood with the support of a crutch, but neither cared about these departures from tradition. The twins, dressed in their finest clothes, were held by Mrs. Holbrook, who dabbed at her eyes throughout the brief ceremony. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Zach kissed his bride with a tenderness that belied his outward strength, whispering against her lips, "Thank you for finding me." The following day, with the assistance of the local magistrate, Zach officially adopted Sam and Sarah, giving them his surname and legally establishing himself as their father. As they signed the papers, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion, as if the family that had been forming since that first night at Cottonwood was finally, officially whole. Christmas at the rented apartment was simple but joyful. They exchanged modest gifts, a handcrafted wooden box for Olivia's sewing supplies from Zach, a new journal bound in leather for him from her. For the twins, they found wooden toys in the local general store and small boots they would need for the Nevada winters. As January progressed, Zach's strength returned more rapidly. He discarded the crutches for a walking stick and began taking short walks around town with Olivia and the twins. The doctor pronounced him well enough to travel by the end of the month, warning only that he should avoid horseback riding for another month at least. The journey back to Cottonwood was planned with military precision. They would travel by stagecoach to Reno, then hire a comfortable wagon for the final leg to the ranch. Mrs. Holbrook agreed to accompany them all the way to Cottonwood, where she would stay on as a nurse for the twins until Martha had trained a permanent replacement. The day before their departure, a letter arrived from Eduardo with news of the ranch. The winter had been mild thus far, he reported, with adequate snowfall but no severe storms. The livestock were healthy, the buildings secure, and all was in readiness for their return. "He's done well," Zach said approvingly as he read the detailed report. "Better than I could have hoped." "We're fortunate to have such loyal people," Olivia agreed, packing the last of their belongings for the journey home. The trip to Reno was tiring but uneventful. The twins, now experienced travelers, fussed less than expected, fascinated by the changing scenery and the attention of their fellow passengers. In Reno, they spent a night at the hotel before setting out for Cottonwood in a rented wagon driven by a local teamster. As they approached the final hill before the ranch, Olivia felt her heart quicken. Though they had been gone only a few months, it seemed like years since she had seen the cottonwood trees and the sturdy house that had become home. The ranch came into view just as the setting sun bathed it in golden light. Smoke rose from the chimney, and lanterns glowed in the windows, creating a welcoming beacon. As the wagon pulled into the yard, the front door opened, and Eduardo, Martha, and the ranch hands emerged, their faces alight with welcome. "Home," Zach said softly, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Our home." The homecoming was joyous, with Martha fussing over the twins' growth, Eduardo proudly showing Zach the improvements he had made to the barn, and the Peterson brothers, back from the cattle drive, relating tales of their adventures. They gathered around the large table for a celebratory dinner, the family and workers of Cottonwood Ranch united once more. Later that night, after the twins were asleep in their familiar nursery and the house had quieted, Olivia and Zach stood on the porch, looking out over the ranch that had brought them together. "It seems impossible that less than a year ago, I was stepping off that stagecoach, expecting to sell this place and return to San Francisco," Olivia said, leaning against her husband's side. "And I was a tired cowboy just trying to keep my promise to a dying friend," Zach added, his arm tightening around her. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking on all of this, the twins, the ranch, me," Zach turned to face her, his blue eyes serious in the lamplight. "Not for a single moment," he said. "That night when you first arrived, when you found me sleeping with the twins, too exhausted to do more than breathe, that was the lowest point, the moment I thought I couldn't do it alone anymore." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And then there you were, like an answer to a prayer I didn't know how to make." "I think we saved each other," Olivia said softly. "I know we did," he replied, bending to kiss her with a tenderness that still made her heart race. Inside, one of the twins began to cry Sarah from the sound of it. Zach chuckled against Olivia's lips. "Duty calls, Mrs. Irwin." Together, they went inside to tend to their child, their steps in perfect harmony, their hearts beating as one. What had begun with exhaustion and uncertainty had transformed into a love as vast and enduring as the Nevada sky, a love built on shared purpose, mutual respect, and the daily choice to face life's challenges side by side. 5 years later, on a warm spring morning, Olivia stood on that same porch, watching as Zach taught 5-year-old Sam and Sarah to ride their first ponies in the corral. Beside her, 3-year-old Thomas Irwin clutched her skirts, his blue eyes so like his father's wide with longing to join his older siblings. "Soon, little one," she promised, resting her hand on her swollen belly where their fourth child grew. "When you're a bit bigger." Cottonwood Ranch had prospered under their joint stewardship. The herd had doubled in size and quality, the buildings had been expanded and improved, and their reputation for fine cattle had spread throughout the territory. What mattered most to Olivia, however, was not the material success, but the family they had built, a family founded on love that had begun the night she found a weary cowboy sleeping upright with a twin in each arm, too tired to breathe. As if sensing her thoughts, Zach looked up from the corral and met her gaze across the yard. The smile they shared held all the warmth of their journey together, past, present, and the promising future that stretched before them like the endless Nevada sky.